warm welcome from Talk Walk. This is Ms.Minoli De Almeida, continuing the talk show on the psychosocial impact of post-COVID. In this episode, we focus on women and children. As panelists, we have Professor Harendra De Silva, Emeritus Professor of the University of Colombo, Shima Ahmed, Shiranti Senanayaka, is Lasantha Mendis, Director, Lead Microfinance Specialist, Sri Lanka Credit Plus Limited and founder of Avanka Lanka, working with vulnerable communities, providing access to finance the poor, welfare of plantation workers, prisoners, and rehabilitation of sex workers. Lasantha is a southerner who has been brazen enough to go into North Sri Lanka to see to their needs and to make everybody else in the south aware of the real suffering and the reality of life in that part of our country.
Thank you, Minoli, for inviting me today. Yes, my journey to Jaffna started in 2004 during the ceasefire. And a group of us, we traveled by road from Colombo to Jaffna. And when we were traveling, I think we went in 4 cars. We were all in tears by the time we got to Jaffna, seeing the devastation, the mass devastation by the side of the roads. In our group were 2 ladies who lost their husbands to the war. And we had a kind of a reconciliation, time of reconciliation with the northern widows. And it was a very moving moment. And, the northern widows, that was the first time they realized, my God, there are widows on the other side. And for our 2 widows too, it was a real eye-opener. And they found that the northern widows were poorer and, economically much more vulnerable. And this started our love for Jaffna. That was in 2004. And soon after, in December, when we had the tsunami, I was traveling down to Galle. And everybody in the vehicle was getting very emotional and sad, but nothing was happening to me. I was wondering, what is wrong with me? Why am I not getting upset about it? Then I suddenly remembered that I had seen worse devastation in Jaffna. So anyway, the war broke out, and we couldn't go to Jaffna, but we kept on going soon after the war finished. But we realized that everybody said Sri Lanka will just take off after the war, and that development, it will be true, Asia's miracle and all that. But what I realized was, in a country like Sri Lanka, where we have, I took a count recently, we have 18 ethnic groups. I'm sure I missed out a couple, so we may be having about 25. So in a family where we'll say you have, leave about 25, you have 10 children. If 3 or 4 children are all the time being oppressed or suffering, or they feel that they are oppressed, how can a family grow? A family will never develop. So with this in mind, we thought, this same group, now we call ourselves Love Jaffna. We just, thought, let's go and try to do something in the north, to build the trust, with the northerners. And when we went, and we went to the Ministry of Women's Affairs, and they said, look, there is this village that we just stumbled upon. Can you come and just take that over? So it was a very manageable size, 40 families. So we went and we visited this village for the first time with the officials. And there were, in this group of officials, there was one Sinhalese girl. And then she spoke to me in Sinhala, and she, pointed out to a family and told me, sir, these people have nothing to eat now. and he said, we are also government servants, we can't support them. So I was horrified. So that day I was staying in Jaffna, so I went back and got them some provisions and came back. And we decided, we must adopt this village. So we have adopted this tiny village called Impachole in Watukotte South, where we want to really build it up with southern support to show the southern solidarity. Hopefully, anticipating that there will be more southerners who will replicate it. And I must say, the cooperation, the support from the people as well as the authority have been amazing. And so we have started this journey, and when we look around, we also see that the poor, especially in the north, are economically very backward, not because of anything else, because since the war ended, which is over a decade, there hasn't been much development. If you see, all the development is Jaffna centric. When you go 10 kilometers away, there is nothing, when I say nothing, comparatively no development. So we are also involved in trying to empower the cooperative, the poor through the cooperative movement, because Jaffna has had a very rich cooperative history, and we are trying to help them with that. Plus, now we have this other organism and organization in the making called Avanka Lanka, where we are trying to help the farmers as well, so to make Jaffna, and the north, to come back to its original, state, where Jaffna was very economically active, economically very strong, and I believe that's the only way Sri Lanka will develop. If we develop the north and the east, then the entire country comes on to one, one platform. Yeah, thank you, Minoli. So as I said, I think it is time that the educated public, takes their stand, because when we think of civil society, we always think of the masses, the big organizations, the grassroots organizations. But what about the educated public? We are the ones who are involved in policy. If you are in the private sector, we contribute towards the GDP, we pay the taxes. If you are in business, you run you run so many enterprises. So, but if you see, we are the most silent. So this is why we started Avanka Lanka, which is an organism and an organization in the making, to challenge the educated public to, join hands, in finding solutions. Don't wait until the government finds solutions. So that is why you see me wearing this attire. It is actually a statement, to make, to show that, Sri Lanka does not belong to the politicians. Sri Lanka belongs to you and me, and whenever I wear this, people ask me, whether I am trying to aspire to get into politics. That's not the issue. The issue is, where do we stand? And Avanka Lanka, that is what we are trying to do. And we were talking earlier about abuse and all that. If you really see again, it is the man who has let down the family. It is the man who has either become a drunkard, or a druggie, which has made the wife, vulnerable. So she has to either go to the Middle East or go to do jobs, and that's the phenomenon is the same, whether it is in the north or in the south or even most probably in the east, So we have taken a few projects like that. One is the Jaffna, then we see as Chiranti quite rightly said, the plantation worker. If you see the plantation worker, the only time politicians talk of plantation workers at the time of election or at the time of a strike.
Quite right.
So if they don't ask for a wage increase, well, forget about them. Well, at the time of election, entice them for a wage hike. So, but if you take, they are about 800,000 people population. How can we forget them? They can't. So this is another group, a very vulnerable group, which we are looking at. Also, if you look at the prisoners, you actually put prisoners, people are put into prison to become better human beings. But what we have been hearing, in the past couple of weeks and months is quite to the contrary, So I think these are areas which you and I can get involved, and try to help them. Now you look at the farmers. COVID showed us the importance of the farmers. If we didn't have the local farmers, we would have died, But it also highlighted the problems the farmers have, the issues the farmers have. And these problems the farmers have been having for decades. And that is why the younger generation of farmers have moved out of farming, So in that respect, we are trying to work in the north, actually with the farmer community, to get them the benefits that the government is promising. All governments, successive governments have, in good faith, have promised, so many things to the farmers. But what happens is the policymaker is there. When it goes down to the grassroots, it's a different story. So we have taken upon ourselves to get on to the field, and try to work with the machinery, the government machinery, and ensure that the farmers are looked after, so that they will keep on doing their farming, and Sri Lanka, which is anyway an agriculture based country,
Absolutely.
Will thrive, just not survive, and with all this smart agriculture and all that, we can really do something. Because if you take the water base also, a majority are from the rural areas, and out of that, majority is from the farming, So I think these are the challenges, I put forward to the educated public, because unfortunately we are very good at criticizing governments on social media. If we can run a government via social media, Sri Lanka will have the best government, right? But you tell them to come, to do something, whether it is in the north and the south, I feel, when you talk, they have all the problems and the solutions, but when you tell them to come visit, let's go to Jaffna, let's do something, they have all the excuses. So I think I'll stop for now and maybe continue later.
They don't have to go to a psychiatrist with a problem, because psychiatrists will help you with your mental illness, but not with your trauma. Trauma, you have to have a counseling process. Do you agree? That's my way of thinking. That's how I was taught.
I totally agree with you, because now if you take the north, you see the teenagers, these are children, teenagers who are maybe very small children during the war, and because of the trauma, in this little village where we work, you ask the teenagers, what do you want to be, what do you want to do, they have no clue, they just look at you, and to me, my heart breaks when I see that. The younger children who have, been born after the war are quite different. They'll say, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a doctor, whatever. But the teenagers, it's devastating, when you see that.
Yeah, I think just to add on, sometimes they may want to be somebody who carries a gun, because they are seeing the people who carry guns being adored. So they are role modeling, and things may be different. I don't know. You may not have gone through it, because I did a big study on recruitment of child soldiers, having studied child soldiers, and one of the main reasons why they joined was they loved people carrying guns, and basically some of the issues was, for example, children's playgrounds at that time with the seesaws. They had AK-47 toy guns fixed at each other, so that they were, while going up and down, these small kids, they shoot at each other. So basically what was happening was the mindset was being changed, right? So some of them who they may be scared to talk about it to you, but if you really go into sort of a psychological analysis, they may want to be something which they focused on when they were small kids.
No,
Yeah, that may be also true.
idealizing as well,
Yeah,
but then
idealizing.
they are now frozen. Their mind
Yes.
is frozen with emotions.
Yes.
So that is why they're staring into space, because they can't think any further. It is really heart-rending. I'm really sorry to be empathetic.
Exactly, and
towards
that is
them.
why I was actually trying to agree with you, where you said counseling is of paramount importance.
Importance,
To
absolutely.
get them out, to think outside the box. The issue is, as a nation, what we have is a breakdown in integrity.
Absolutely.
Now I am sure a teacher doesn't join the profession thinking I will only send a couple of fellows to get A's. But what happens is, unfortunately, our system is such, we see that at every level.
Just one thing, I feel that this whole mentality of getting A's by the administration has a lot to do with promotions. Like, you go up the ladder as a principal or a teacher if your students have higher A's, I feel.
Yeah, no, I think it is linked to tuition, private tuition,
Absolutely.
where all these people are
money.
involved in it. I mean, it's like even doctors do private practice,
Yes.
and they get various promotions to promote themselves. So
You're saying,
I don't
correct.
know.
No, because if you see, it's the integrity factor that has, there is a breakdown there.
Completely.
And from there onwards, everything is in a mess. Now, if you look at all this, if the doctors do their job, the teachers do their job, the policemen do their job properly, imagine what we can achieve. But the thing is, the system, the majority has broken the system. And as Professor earlier said also, if there is discipline, what if we break the law? But but it has become the norm. You get copped, you will get a fine $3,000, so give him 1,000. That's okay, that's fine. But then we find a problem when somebody else takes a larger bribe. So I think that's why we at Avanka Lanka, what we are trying to say is, let's bring back that integrity. Let's hold the authorities accountable. Let's be accountable first. And then I think most of these issues we can solve if everybody tries to get into that mode. And that is where I think we invite the educated public to join this, because I'm sure we can lead by example.